Tails and Scales, The Empty Throne. Chapter 12. Kobolds. Forced out of his home, helped clear out a band of rebels or bandits being chased by shady riders. Things have gotten grim for Silvus. He is knocked out cold by some unknown force. The only train of memory he can remember are the mysterious strangers who wanted him for some reason. The better question? No. Two better questions are, why do they want him and how are they tracking him? His train of thought is interrupted by a bump below him. He feels himself lying on some wooden platform. Hearing pairs of feet and cranking wheels, Silvus slowly opens his eyes to see that his talons are tied up. He freaks out, trying to stand, only to get hit on the head by the ceiling, forcing him to sit back down. He uses his tail to rub his head. Silvus looks around to see he is inside a cage, being escorted by 5 strange little creatures who are as tall as a raptor's hip. 4 are walking along the carriage, while the 5th is on his seat, driving it with 2 large skink-like creatures pulling. Aside from their small sizes, they also wear very strange oriental-style armor with curved, skinny longswords on their belts. Silvus looks behind to see the 2 snaguanas are okay, but are tied up to the carriage with their snouts muzzled. Then he looks back in front to see Eiko trying to stand up, pacing around, rambling about their current predicament. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. His ramblings remind Silvus of his uncle back home, who had also rambled with his mother. Makes sense, since Eiko is his uncle's son. His cousin continues to ramble until one of the little guards up front walks up and pokes him with his small spear, making him go ouch and falls into fetal position. By the root, be quiet, trespasser! The guard sounds very serious and annoyed. The tone of annoyance from the guard makes Silvus wonder how long he has been unconscious. He slowly gets up and crawls up to the right of the cage and calls out one of the escort guards. Excuse me, sir. Where are we, and where are we going? The guard looks at him. He cannot see what the guard's face looks like due to his helmet covered most of his face. What he can see is a pair of serpent-slit eyes looking at him, and a pair of horns. The guard only tells him to look for himself. Silvus looks around to see he is being escorted deeper into a cave like a tunnel. Inside the tunnel, Silvus sees strange roots sticking out, giving the tunnel lots of light. He even sees stone-carved statues that look identical as the creatures who are escorting them. They must be very artistic, I give him that, Silvus thinks to himself, before turning his attention back to his wounded cousin. Silvus walks up to Eiko, still shaking in fetal position, holding onto his leg where the spear poked him. Eiko, are you okay? He asks him, looking worried. Eiko slowly looks up to Silvus with a scared look on his face, and weakly asks him, Do you know who these guys are? Please tell me you know something. Silvus tries to remember if he has ever read anything about the creatures. Of all the books he read, there is one book in mind that speaks about the old fables. One in particular is about kobolds, small 2-legged lizards that live underground below them. Looking at one guard, Silvus calls out to him once again. Excuse me, sir. Guard, forgive our ignorance, but what are you guys called? We call ourselves kobolds, prisoner. Now be quiet before I poke you like your little friend, the guard demands, very aggressively. He even shows Silvus his spear to show he is not joking. Silvus walks to a corner of the cage to sit on until he notices that he does not have a strap on him. He hectically looks at his back to see the package is not with him. Looking around, he spots the package lying near the driver. As much as he wants to get it back, 2 things stop him. First, he is bound. Second, he and his cousin are stuck in the cage, being escorted to wherever the creatures who call themselves kobolds live. The best that Silvus can do is lie back and wait while Eiko begs with one of the guards, who are just getting more annoyed. One of them makes small grunts, wanting him to shut the heck up. The carriage makes a stop. Silvus, who tried to sleep the entire ride, jolts up awake with gasp. He gets onto his feet to see a large gray gate in the middle, guarded by two more of the creatures or kobolds guarding the gate. One of the gate guards walks up to the driver and asks him, "What is this?" "We found them in the middle of the tunnel, so we captured them to take him to the king so he could deal with them." The driver points back at the two bound cousins. "What?" Ego freaks out, while Silvus makes a small gasp. "Sir, in our defense, we did not know this cave is... Gah! Silence!" One of the guards now pokes Silvus with a spear, earning him a snarling hiss, only to be poked again. Not wanting any more trouble, Silvus stays silent, while Ego beside him begins to sweat and shake in fear. The gate guard nods with the driver and walks to back toward the gate. He opens up a secret little door to shout, "Open the gates!" The stone gates begin to slowly open to allow the carriage to continue its course. Both Silvus and Ego both have their eyes wide open, looking amazed by the sight of a circular underground city with stone cylinder buildings with colorful curved rooftops. What is more appealing about the city are the strange roots sticking out from both the ceiling above and the ground below, giving it lots of light. The inhabitants, the kobolds that dwell on the stone streets, are indeed reptilians walking on 2 feet like raptors. Unlike raptors, they are a bit smaller, with beak-like snouts. Not to mention they have big frill on their heads, almost resembling a tritop. The boys seem to be more muscular, having long horns on their forehead, with darker scale color, while females are more slender but lacking horns, yet their scale colors are brighter. The little kobolds seem to be singing a cheerful melody while they work. They sing tending to their private little root gardens. They sing while cleaning their houses. And even guards are singing while they patrol the streets. Looking around the streets, Silvus notices a group of kobolds are weaving a strange silky material he has never seen before, harvested from strange big worm-like creatures, instead of cotton from the puffer plants. A kobold or two spots the carriage with faces of amazement, as if they have never seen them for a long time. They stop singing to run up the carriage to check out the newest visitors or prisoners. Even the hatchlings stop playing in the streets to see the newcomers. Eventually, more kobolds begin rushing through to get closer looks, only for the guards that patrol to block their path, allowing the carriage to enter another district. They must be in the nobility district, to judge by the fancy-looking buildings that look like towers with curvy rooftops, cleaner streets, and the kobolds wearing silk rags and jewels that make them look like nobles. In contrast to the lower class, the nobles sing a more soothing tone, while some of them drink wine, play with instruments, paint pictures, and even walk strange shelled reptiles on a leash. The songs are so relaxing. Ego seems to have calmed down. Silvus can only think of the district, as it reminds him of the Creston Betadum by what he is taught. Noticing their presence, the nobles stop singing and walk up to the carriage rather than rushing. The crowd whisper among themselves about the prisoners, while the carriage continues its course. More guards nearby join up to keep order. Eventually the carriage stops by a large towering structure that is built right on a wall north of the district. Its mere size so big, the cousins cannot help but admire. "Dude, that must be where their ruler lives," Ika whispers to Silvus, keeping his eyes on the castle, watching its gates open up. Coming out of the castle gates is an elderly dark blue kobold male wearing a crown between his long horns, with a nice blue cape made of silk. He is followed by a bodyguard and 2 other kobold nobles, who might be his children or members of court. One is a young dark blue male wearing the same oriental carved armor, but black, He has a serious expression on his face like a soldier. The other is a pearl-white female with a flirtatious look, wearing a purple short cloak, a necklace, and some rings. All the nearby nobles bow to the crowned kobold, confirming he is the king of the metropolis. The king looks very annoyed as he approaches the guard at a rapid pace. "Guard, what is the meaning of this?" the king kobold demands calmly of the driver, as he examines both Silvus and Eco. "We found those two trespassing into our entrance tunnel, so we decided to capture them, your majesty," the guard driver explains to the king, taking out the package at his side, making Silvus run up with a gasp of worry. "We also found this thing strapped on one of them." The king takes the package for a closer look. With his green eyes, he looks it up and down. He gives it to the young blue male and turns to the guard and commands him, "Take them to the dungeons so we can prepare for trial." "As you command, my king." The guard of the carriage salutes and takes the two cousins to wherever the dungeon is. Eco tries to plead his innocence, only to be poked by the guard again. Silvus, however, could only watch the king and the other young bolds looking at them as they are taken to the dungeon. For a stone dungeon, the place is very clean, according to Silvus, as he sits in his cell by the corner while Eco lies in fetal position on the stone bed, looking very terrified. Silvus walks up to his scared younger cousin, puts out a now unbound talon and tells him, "You asked for this, cousin." In response, Eco looks up, giving Silvus a childish glare, yet struggles to keep the face on, knowing that his cousin is right. How can you be this calm? We are prisoners to a bunch of little guys. So humiliating." Eco moans at the idea of dying by the claws of the small creatures. Eco walks up to the bars of the cell, hoping to get a closer glimpse of the dungeon. This kingdom must not have problem with crime, due to cells being empty, except for one cell. A female walks up looking seductive toward him. She makes a wink with bedroom eyes, asking how a handsome male like himself got cut up. Silvus' face turned red, and he takes a few steps back toward the wall. Dragging his back down against the wall, he sits down with his arms around his knees. Silvus worries that now he is in prison, he will not be able to head to Padalot. Even worse, the package that he is supposed to deliver is out of his grasp. Suddenly, a pair of guards walks up to the cell to bang the bars with their stubby talons, getting his attention. "The king wants to speak with you," one of the guards says directly to Silvus, making the latter get up. Eco hopes to follow suit, only for the guards to stop him, shouting at him, at the same time pointing at Silvus. "Only this one! You stay!" "You kidding me?" Eco complains, only to be punched in the gut by one of the guards and knocked out cold. "Did you really have to do that?" Silvus asks the guard, being concerned for his cousin's safety. The guard only tells him to follow, as the other guard closes the cell, leaving behind an out-cold Eco on the stone floor. Taken to a stone hall of the castle, Silvus follows the guard all the way to a bronze metal door. The guard escorting tells him to wait as he enters through the door. While he waits, Silvus thinks about why the king wanted to see him specifically. His train of thought is interrupted by a female voice. "What the strange fellow you want?" Silvus looks around, trying to see who called him. The voice tells him to look down, so he does, to see the young female noble who is with the king looking at him. With her emerald green eyes with a flirtatious look, he asks, ignoring the pretty face, "Who are you?" The female laughs and begins circling around him, like a velocity getting ready to attack her prey. Silvus keeps his guard up as he begins to sense a dark aura around her. "You may call me Gretchen, princess of this underground world, Shima." The female kobold answers him like a scheming rich girl, trying to get what she wants. "So this city is called Shima? And if you're a princess, that means the king is your father?" Silvus guesses. Kree giggles in response, clarifying his answer, Out of nowhere, she uses one of her stubby claws to grab Silvus by the collar, to bring his head down so she can take a closer look at his silver face. She stares at his blue eyes for a few awkward seconds and places a kiss on his nose. Silvus flinches back up in response, turning red as a tomato, using his claws to wipe it off, making Cree laugh.
Oh, you have some very interesting skills. Are there others with such a thing?
Cree stops her laughter to look at Silvus again. Not that I'm aware of, but seriously, lady, what the heck? Silvus snarls at her quietly.
Well then, I better get to my quarters.
Cree starts to walk away, not caring about Silvus's reaction. She stops on her tracks to turn her head around to tell him.
Guess I will see you around, handsome.
With that, she leaves. Silvus just stood, looking dumbfounded. Spirits, that is the second female that flirted with me. He thinks to himself as the door behind him opens. The king would like to see you now, the guard orders gruffly, as he comes out, opening the door wider for Silvus to enter by crouching, since the door is a bit short. Silvus is greeted by a decent-sized office filled with small furniture. He walks up to a short yet long table, trying to sit on one of the 3 stone chairs. Being too short, he is very uncomfortable due to being a taller creature. In front, across the table, the bigger chair turns around, revealing the king himself not wearing his crown. What is your name? The king asks him with an inquisitive look. My full name is Vessel Silvus, but call me Silvus, your majesty. The young rapper makes a small bow to the king to show some respect. Interesting. I am Yi Jin. You probably figured that I am the king of what is left of my beloved Shima. What is left, your majesty? Silvus tilts his head, curious about what King Yi Jin meant. King Yi Jin looks hesitant to explain, probably due to the fact Silvus is a stranger to him. Yi gets off his chair, walking up to a nearby portrait of what looks like a kobold queen, because she is wearing a crown with pearl white scales. As the king looks at the portrait, a tear comes out of his eye. By the root, listen, we might look like a bunch of jolly little lizards, but in truth, we are facing a crisis of our own, King Yi explains to Silvus with a depressing tone. Kinda hard to imagine seeing your subjects sing very happily to each other, Silvus states with a small chuckle, earning a small glare from Yi, making him stop. Long ago, this city was the seat of a mighty empire. Our kind, throughout the years, built outer roads that once connected the city to the claves. What are other outer roads and claves, if I may ask? Silvus respectfully asks Yi about the weird names due to his ignorance of kobold society. Of course you be ignorant. You raptors live in the surface world. Lack of contact do make the perfect bait for one's ignorance. Ki makes one more glance serious at the portrait. Is she? Silvus asks the king, now concerned about his fixation. That is my late wife, mother of my 3 hatchlings. Ki takes a deep breath with his eyes closed. Sorry to hear that, your majesty. Silvus feels guilty, looking away only to hear the king chuckle, surprising him. He sees Yi turn around back in good spirits as he fixes up the cape, shifting it side to side, as if he is wearing a tie. It's all right, surface dweller. It has been years since then. At least I am happy with my eldest son and my 2 daughters. Yi pauses and shakes his head, realizing he is distracted from the point. Never mind that. Come with me. I'd like to show you something. Yi gestures his arm for Silvus to follow him out of the office. Led by Kini, Silvus finds himself inside a large square room with a long glowing root sticking out. On the walls are different panels with a painted picture. Silvus looks around the room as if he stepped into the heavens. Each panel seems to tell a story. One panel shows a big glowing root surrounded by kobolds bowing to it. Another panel shows a kobold with a crown, looking high and mighty, in front of a large crowd of kobolds, with the same root in the background. Welcome to the Holo Stories. Since the beginning, our ancestors have recorded all they know on these walls. The first panel you see talks about how we are the children of the mother root. The second one you see is the crowning of the first king, chosen by the root to be her voice, to guide her children along with the various scions, the champions of our kind who founded the ruling clans. Kini guides Silvus to another panel, but this time the entire city is shining gold. Since then, the king of the ruling clans created the mighty Shima Empire, living the golden age under the Mother Root's guidance. For example, we learned how to use large silky worms to produce our wondrous outfits. The king's expression turns sour as he walks up to another panel. Silvus gasps in horror as he sees the next panel shows different kings, queens, and other bureaucrats turn their backs on the pleas of their subjects as they suffer at the claws of fearsome beasts and savage kobolds who turn to corruption. Eventually, the ruling clans turn their backs on the mother root. They ignore the pleas of others and care not for the teachings of the mother root. The king and Silvus shift to another panel, but this time it has squares of different underground villages with tunnels connected on one square. The city is on fire, with savage beasts and kobolds acting like bandits. As if the mother root were punishing us, Shima collapsed. The claves or villages in your speech that connected the city by the underground network of large tunnels, the outer roads, fell to the feral creatures and the lost. The lost were kobolds who submitted to a life of crime due to frustrations of the past kings and queens. As for the kobolds who do not submit, they fled back to the city. The city you see here is all that is left of the once beloved empire, Ashima. Silvus feels a tear come out of his eyes. Listening to the entire story makes him feel bad for the little lizards. It makes him think the kingdom of Avalonia might be suffering the same fate. What about today? How have you been running things? Silvus sobs a bit, hoping there could be some beacon of light. Yi turns around to face him. In my reign, the best I could do was help protect what is left of my subjects from the horrors of not only the outer roads, but also the horrors of the surface world. Speaking of the surface world, you and your friends were not the only raptors to have come here. Really? Silvus questioned, surprised. Oh yes. I called for you specifically because your skills remind me of the raptor who calls himself the Alpha Prince. Ultimar Solta, he called himself. Silvus perks up at the mention of the late Alpha King when he was Alpha Prince. That sparks more questions into his mind. E continues. Oh yes, at some point I sent scouts to navigate the surface world. Eventually, they came across a group of strange tall lizards, raptors they call themselves, being led by Salter. I have to say, Salter was a charming fellow. I showed them around and told them of our plight. Not to mention, he promised when he becomes Alpha King, he would help negotiate trade and possibly help us take back our old territory within the outer roads. That is a lot to take in. Silvus does not believe what the little king told him. At first, not only that the Alpha King knew about the kobolds, but actually made a promise. In his mind, a question pops in. Did others know about the kobolds too? Now that you're here, I assume you might be an envoy. So did he become Alpha King yet, so he can fulfill his promises? He asks in a form of a plea. He must be very desperate to assume that Silvus is some emissary for the Alpha King, who is actually long dead. Feeling uneasy, Silvus debates in his mind how is he going to spell out the old news. For sure, he isn't going to lie to foreign royalty. He better think quickly, as the king is staring at him, losing some patience. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, your majesty, but Alpha King Sulfur died 24 winters ago. What? How? He demands in denial. Silvus explains to him that Sulfur died a month after his coronation, during a party. In response, Yi is even more devastated by the news. The broken king walks up to the panel of the golden painted city, places a stubby claw on it, and falls to his knees. Silvus does not know what to do at this point. He can only listen to the king rambling about how their only hope for survival is gone. Suddenly, an idea comes into his head, remembering about his destination. Maybe he can try to negotiate. My cousin and I were heading to Padalot, Your Majesty. The king looks at the raptor behind him with only one eyebrow raised, listening to what Silvus had to say. Even with the Alpha King dead, the Mystatorium took legionary power, so maybe I can talk to them about the promise. Silvus continues, hoping to shed some light for both the king and himself. You would do that? Yi gets up with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Silvus nods yes, and continues. Indeed, Your Majesty. My cousin and I were on an important mission until we ended up here. A mission? Yes, a mission that involves delivering a certain package I believe you gave to that other noble before you took me and my cousin to the dungeon. Silvus explains to Yi that he had a package with him. Then he proceeds to tell him how he could speak to the Mystatorium to see if he could convince him to fulfill a promise. That lifted Yi's spirits a bit, thinking about the offer. After thinking it through, the king gives his answer. As much as I would love to accept your offer, and as true as your story is, you and your cousin are still under suspicion. Don't get me wrong, you do seem like the fine sort, but you are still a stranger. Tomorrow, we are going to hold a trial to decide what to do with you both. Silvus is disappointed by the response. The king does have a point, and he and his cousin are strangers who somehow trespassed into unknown territory. So the king orders the guard to take him back to the dungeon into his cell. End of chapter 12.